Ever needed to join two pieces of fabric together? Maybe you need to patch a hole in your favorite clothes or make entirely new duds for an upcoming cosplay event. In today's video, we'll go over the top 5 most common stitching techniques, plus 2 bonus techniques that you can use to become a sewing master. By the way, if you want to continue learning new skills, hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date on all of the new talents we have to offer here on Proficient Skills. Let's get started. Here, we will be going over what materials are needed to sew. First and foremost is thread. Thread comes in all kinds of colors and thicknesses, so you want to make sure to choose something for your specific project. Next up are fabric scissors. These are usually thicker and sharper than a standard pair of scissors used for paper. If you ever wondered why your mom yelled at you for using her fabric scissors, it's because fabric scissors will not only dull faster when cutting paper, but they tend to be more expensive. Sorry, Mom. Finally, we have our sewing needle. These have an opening on one end where we tie our thread, and a sharp pointed end that will go through our fabric. You want to be careful as it's really easy to accidentally prick yourself with these. Let's move on to how to actually sew. First, we need to prepare our thread and needle. Unravel some thread, double the amount you need on your edge. So if you are sewing an object 5 inches long, unravel 10 inches of thread. When cutting the thread, tilt your scissors at a 45-degree angle. This will help with the next step. Next, we need to thread the needle. This involves taking one end of the thread and slipping it through the hole or eye of the needle. Remember cutting at a 45-degree angle? This was to help stiffen the end of the thread. If you're still having trouble, you can moisten the end of the thread to make it even stiffer. Once we have our needle threaded, we line up the ends and slide our sewing needle so it's in the middle of our piece of thread. To make sure our thread stays in place while sewing, we will need to form a knot at the end. I usually form a second knot over the first, just to make it bigger. In this case, I knot at the end 3 times. Now, let's get to sewing. Here, we have our piece of fabric that is folded over. Let's begin with a baste stitch. This is usually used to hold fabric together while we work, and it can be cut away after we finish using other stitch patterns to join our fabric. A common start is to push the thread up and through between the 2 fabrics to create a hidden knot. We will then move our needle about 3/4 to 1/2 inches away and push down through the right or visible side of our fabric. Pull the thread taut. And now we will look at the wrong or piece of the fabric that is not meant to be visible side. We will move our needle over the same 3/4 to 1/2 inches and push through to the visible side. Continue this pattern until we reach the end of our fabric. Remember, the base stitch is meant to be temporary and isn't strong enough for a permanent joint. Next up is our running baste stitch. This stitching is more secure than our standard base stitch and can be done more quickly. Like our base stitch, we weave our needle through the fabric and this time make our stitching length 1/4 to 3/4 inches. This is what makes the running stitch stronger. Now to end our stitches, we take our needle and thread it through the underside of our fabric only. Next, we pull it through the loop created by our existing thread to make a knot. Snip off the excess and we are good to go. Because the running stitch is also a basting stitch, remember that while it's stronger, it's only used to temporarily hold together fabric. The next stitches can be used to permanently join your edges. This stitch is called a cross stitch and is performed from left to right. We begin with our hidden knot and move the needle to the right and above before threading through the fabric. On the underside or wrong side of our fabric, we move the needle to the left of our stitch and up to the right side. Finally, we move our needle diagonally to the bottom right and thread it through the fabric, completing the cross stitch. Here it is again a little closer. We push our needle up from the underside, move diagonally above and to the right, thread through, then move our needle directly left, thread through, and finally diagonally down and to the right to complete. This is a really nice decorative stitch that can be varied to make all kinds of X shapes. Next, we have our blanket stitch. This is used most commonly on the edges of blankets, but can also be used for pillowcases or sweaters. Unlike most stitches, this one will be seen from both sides, with the bulk of our decoration on the edge of our fabric. As before, begin with our hidden knot. However, this time, we'll push our needle up and through the same hole as our hidden knot. This can take a few tries to get right. Once we have our thread in the correct position, we want to pull to tighten slowly until we are left with a loop. Going from left to right, we pass our needle through the loop and pull to tighten. Now we move our needle 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch to the left and do the same. The blanket stitch relies on the next stitch to keep all previous ones in place. Here it is again. We thread our needle through our fabric, pull to create a loop, pass our needle through the loop from left to right, and pull to tighten. And there you have it, a perfect blanket stitch. Useful for reinforcing the edges of your fabric or adorning it with a unique pattern. Next up is the whip stitch. In my opinion, this one's easily done vertically. Begin with you guessed it, the hidden knot from underneath our fold. You will then go diagonally above and to the right to the other edge and thread our needle through. On the wrong side of our fabric, we will push our needle up and through the fabric so we come up above our first stitch. We then move diagonally up and to the right to complete a second stitch. Repeat this process all the way to the edge. Normally, the stitches are closer together to make it tighter and secure your edge. I only have it this far apart so it's easier to see. Next is the slip or ladder stitch. Beginning with our hidden knot, we then go to the other edge. Let me zoom in a bit. There we go. As I was saying, starting from our initial point, we then go directly across to the other edge and weave our needle across the edge. We then pull through, move our needle back to the opposite edge, and weave our needle through the fabric. Uh-oh, here comes my cat. Hey buddy, how's it going? Oh, not for you. Okay, where were we? Pull this through. Move the needle across, weave along the edge, and pull through. Continue this all the way through the edge. Now comes the beauty of this stitch. As we tighten our thread, we can actually see that our stitching virtually disappears. This is a great stitch if you want to hide your seams. Finally is one of the oddest but strongest stitches, the back stitch. Begin with the hidden knot a little further from the edge than usual. Instead of going forward, we will first go one stitch length behind and thread our needle through. From the underside of our fabric, we will then thread our needle up 2 stitch lengths away, leaving a gap. Finally, we move our needle back to the end of the previous stitch, ideally going through the same hole, and thread our needle through. We continue this 2 steps forward, 1 step back method all the way across our fabric. And that's the back stitch, one of the strongest stitching patterns to join any 2 fabrics. And there we have it, 7 stitching patterns ranging from temporary to decorative that you can use for any hand sew project. Don't forget to subscribe to continue learning new skills with me here at Proficient Skills.